welcome to my very first curriculum segment. Zaevul is with me, and we're going to be working through a game plan for Zaevul to use in ladder practice. So Zaevul, before we start, why don't you state some of the things you want to improve at?
In which respect? Just in general, or?
Just in general, because we want to cover these things as we create the game plan. So if you want to work on something like you said, late game mechanics, your game plan will want to revolve around getting to that late game. If
Right.
you want to work on aggression, then we're going to be talking about. So just throw things out there. You can throw out lots of things, and we'll try and include as many things as we can
So
in your game plan.
things I want to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to work on aggression because I don't play very aggressively. I'm fairly passive. Other than a little bit of scouting, I don't tend to be aggressive. When I am aggressive, I don't do it well, and I'm not really sure exactly
Right.
why or what. Like, I'm sure it's something to do with the timings, or it is to do with the timings rather. That I'm attacking when I shouldn't be, or I should have attacked earlier or later.
Okay.
Um,
So
and
that's
do
going
that
to
kind of
be
thing because I understand the concept of attack and expand behind
mm-hmm.
your attack, but I've never done it successfully. Most times I do that,
Right.
I then go and lose.
We don't. Okay.
Um, so which is bad, which means I've done it wrong somehow, right?
Right. Right.
And the other things, yeah, like just late game unit compositions. I just build lots of Marines and medvacs, and sometimes
Okay.
throw in other stuff. So, and I'm not really, I don't know, I don't know Terran very well as far as unit compositions are concerned. Because
Okay.
originally I played a lot of Protoss, and I know those. Well, I knew the Wings of Liberty compositions fairly well. Um,
Right.
the ones that complemented each other. Whereas with Terran, I'm not really sure. You just have lots of Marines, get a bunch
Right.
of battle
Right.
cruisers. I don't know. What's the equivalent to lots of void rays?
Yeah, I guess that's just battle cruisers or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Battle bruisers. So, okay, so that's a good place to start. So we got number one, we want to be more aggressive. We want to be a more active player on the battlefield. So as
Yes.
we're working through these steps, we're going to make notes of where you should be becoming active. So that's a great thing. Okay, solid macro play for late game practice. Obviously, we don't want to be doing any kind of big timings that limit our potential for late game. So we really want to be focusing on
Yeah.
more of being aggressive without committing. And then your last thing was just compositions. Sorry, I'm holding up four fingers for some reason. Compositions. So that's obviously really matchup dependent and things of
Yes.
that nature. So we'll talk about it a bit. We'll see if we can sort of think about different ways to mold which production buildings you're building,
Hmm.
um, dependent on what you're seeing. We'll see. We'll see if we get to that. That's definitely something really interesting, and something that will come. So now that we have some goals for us to include into this game plan, let's first talk about expansion timings. So just as like an optimization note, if you're constantly producing SCVs, if and assuming just let's pretend you don't take gas. When you hit 17 SCVs, you want to be sending that 17th SCV to your next CC, right? So as you're thinking about when we want to get your first base, when we want to get that second base, you want to be thinking, how does that pair up to my SCV count? And what you'll realize is that you get 16 SCVs really fast.
Yeah.
You get 32 SCVs really fast after that. So something you want to be thinking about is expanding early and expanding often. So, what kind of production buildings do you want to have on one base before you expand?
Uh, well, I usually do barracks because then you don't need gas. So
So
three
how
barracks.
many? What kind of number? Because so if you were to one racks expand, you'd be building that racks at 12, and you'd be building that command center at like 16 or so, right?
Right.
So that's like the standard one racks expand. What's the problem with doing like a one racks expand?
Uh, you have less. Um, you can't build as many units, so if they attack you, you don't have anything
Yeah, you have
except
like
for a
no
second base.
units.
Yeah, because you have bigger. You've invested heavily in economy early on, which is going to be better later on, but it leaves you quite vulnerable. Should
Right.
they scout that and having not expanded, they attack you with the army that they do have from investing in military.
Okay, so when we talked about spending back in episode way back in episode 1 a
Episode
whole
one,
month
I still
ago,
remember. Yeah.
what was the most important things for you to be spending your income on in the early game?
Economy and military, and I had been
Right.
initially spending way too much in technology
Mm.
and was losing because technology is useful later, but initially is useless.
So do you think it's a
Essentially,
good idea to get gases before you expand?
I don't think so. Not as Terran because I don't need gas for Marines. So
Okay.
as and Marines are just so strong. Unless I want to
Yeah.
do some early Reaper harass, there's not really. I don't think
Right.
there's a really good reason for it. Unless my micro's so useless that doing a Reaper harass would be a complete waste of time at this point.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So you'll want to think about how many barracks we want then. So if we're just going to wait, so I'm showing this on screen, so I have your barracks and your expand. So right after your expand, right after you build that CC, I'm going to put gases because that's kind of the
Yeah,
next step you're thinking.
that's usually what I've been doing. Is what is it? Yeah, I usually end up doing it like halfway through the CC being built. I drop
Okay.
gases, usually one after the other, not together.
And before we jump to that, how many barracks do you want to build before you expand?
I like to have all three up
Okay.
so
I'm
that I have a lot. Although I don't know if maybe it's better to do two and then build one and then build the CC and then
I'm completely fine with you building 3 barracks before you expand.
yeah.
I'm fine with that.
That I felt it's the safest.
Yeah, and that's really all we care about is safety in the early game. And if you're only investing in 450 minerals for barracks, that's not that much.
No, it's not holding back my CC an enormous amount.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you were to get 2 gases, that's the equivalent of another barracks. So if you were to
Yeah,
go
it's
to
another barracks and SCV's
plus the
not
SCV's not
getting
mining.
minerals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm fine with this. It's going to be you're going to have a lot of units though, so you want to be active with those units.
Yeah.
So when we talk about aggression, maybe with this expand, because you'll start the expand, you'll take your gases. Maybe you want to take some of these Marines and go be active on the map and find out if they're expanding.
Right.
Because if you think about it, you're going to have a lot more production than people who are doing, just using Protoss as an example, a one gate expand or a one gate Stargate expand or some kind of like harassment style. So you
Yeah.
have this opportunity to not only be very safe, but to take map control and get some understanding of what your opponent's doing. So in your game plan, I wrote barracks times 3, expand gases, and then beside gases, I'm going to say take map control, okay? So be aware that taking map control can be risky if your opponent is doing some sort of hyper aggression. So
Yeah.
maybe something like
Like
first sending out
speedlings.
first sending out one Marine or an SCV just to get a feel for what's out there, and then go ahead bringing sort of a main army. And another thing is,
Right.
you don't want to move out with your army if the guy did a one gate Stargate expand, because he's going to have oracles in your main.
Right.
So we definitely want to figure out if he's expanded, because then you can be aggressive. If he's not expanded, then you kind of want to be a little more passive with these units. But you
Right.
do have the units, which is really important for not only defending, but also taking map control. So after you take these gases, your command center will finish. You'll float that command center out, and you'll have Marines out on the map. So now
Yep.
what is the next step? You have 3 barracks, 2 gas, 2 command centers.
Yeah. Well, I want to have a bunker at the entrance to my second. Oops. And then I'm gonna usually I like to have, as soon as I have enough gas, throw down. First, as soon as I expand, I like to throw down a couple engineering bays so I can start on my upgrades for my Marines. And then after that, throw down a factory, get to the armory when that's done, so that I can continue upgrades. And then I also threw down a Stargate. So yeah, and get the medvacs to heal up my bio army.
Okay, so how do we simplify this? Because you said a lot of things,
Right.
and it all just kind of meshed together. So you talked about engineering bays, you talked about static defense, and then you talked about going up to starport tech.
Yeah.
So is that kind of... Here's what I'm seeing, is you have these 3 barracks, and you have a lot of units early,
Yeah.
but if right at this moment you stop investing in army completely, which is what you're doing, you're investing all of...
I always also am always building out of those 3 barracks.
Yeah, that's the amount of production we'd want on one, not even on half of one base, right? Because if one base can support 5 or 6 barracks, 5
Right.
is more like it.
Right.
You have virtually like a third of your about a third of the production that you could have on 2 base.
Right.
So what I'm saying is you're going to have this group of units which are going to be useful at the early game, but as soon as you move into a 2 base versus 2 base situation, you're going to be lacking significantly in any kind of army, because you're going up to starport, you're going up to +1/+1, and you haven't invested in your army at all, pretty much.
Right.
So let's try and whittle it down a bit. Let's sort of pick the important parts of it, and then remember the most important part, because this is still early mid game. The most important part is army and economy. We don't want to just go wild into technology and then lose because the guy was aggressive. So we have sort of this choice, I guess. You can go engineering bays. I guess this is sort of my recommendation, because we want to create a solid macro play for your late game practice. So which route do you want to go? Do you want to go heavy into upgrading your units, or do you want to go more into like the starport, the increasing your units' usefulness?
Right. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's just a choice you want to make.
Once I get it seems once I get the medvacs, it's like I have more Marines, because they don't just die, they can come back to life, more or less.
Right,
As
so
long as
you're
they don't
saying
fully die.
medevacs improve your overall army strength, as would upgrades, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're comparable in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So now which route do you want to go down? Because either way is completely viable, but we don't want to overcommit to technology too early. As soon as you get on 6 gas, like 3 base, you're going to want to do all of the things, because you're going to have the income, you're going to have the gas income, the mineral income to do everything. But on 2 base, it's still this volatile point in the game.
Right.
So what do you think is going to be more useful as you take a 3rd base?
I would prefer to have medvacs than
Okay.
upgrades.
And that's a really common theme in Terrans, right? Now, if we go down this path, we need to realize that we don't have turrets for detection
Yeah, that's the other
or
thing.
for
Protection from oracles or
yeah,
that kind
or
of thing.
yeah, to deal with harassment. So that's something we want to address in this game plan because we want to cover all our bases and create a really solid thing. So how do you think you can address with something like that?
Well, if I'm not going to have turrets, I can split my army up a bit. Leave some stuff at my bases instead of just having it in one clump, which is what I always end up doing. Just have a big
Right.
clump of my army up at my up at my ramp.
Okay.
Now that would solve the problem of not having turrets, and after the Hellbats get dropped out of the medvac, they can still be attacked with Marines.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so and then just as a note, when you're dealing with cloaked units like Banshees and Dark Templar, it's
Yeah,
going to become incredibly important not only to drop an engineering bay immediately as soon as you have any kind of inkling.
but stop dropping mules so I can scan.
Yes, precisely.
As
And
soon as as soon as I think that they are possibly going that route, yeah, I need to not let the energy max, but keep it right under that point. Dropping mules only when I need
yeah,
to not waste energy, so to speak.
great. So those are notes. So let's talk about your production. So you have 3 barracks, a factory, and a starport. What are you doing with those production buildings? Because
Um,
we want to talk about compositions a bit.
right. Well, without uh, Hellbats require army. That's correct, right? So I
Yes.
can't be making Hellbats. I can be making Hellions. Um, and I'm gonna want Medvacs, Marines, and I'm probably gonna want to drop. Well, depending. If it's Protoss, I'm gonna want Marauders because they're gonna have Stalkers armored versus armored. You're gonna want the Marauders because they do that bonus damage. That's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not, if it's Zerg, or Terran, unless I see they're going mech, don't really need Marauders. Not as much as Protoss, where they will have Stalkers. They just will,
Right.
almost always. Um, so yeah, I don't know for composition.
Okay.
I'm not very good at. I've never really used the. I don't even know their names. Little guys that burrow and launch missiles.
Mines.
However, mines, the seeker mines, or no, there's mine guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Although those would be really useful for defense as well. Sink one at each base.
yeah, it's true because they hit air.
Yeah, and ground, right?
Yeah.
And they do AOE damage.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the production buildings you have. So you have 3 barracks, which I consider 1.5 production building, a factory and a starport, which are each 1. So you're sitting at 3.5 production. So
Right.
that's really low for 2 base.
Yeah.
So how do we want to sort of move up to a larger scale production?
Right. Well, being that I usually go with medvacs, I'd want to throw reactor on there so I can double produce them.
Okay. So we'll add a reactored starport.
And then if I'm not having the ability to build Hellbats, I don't know if I want to throw tanks in there. Go with Tech Lab on that.
On the factory.
Yeah. And then I can throw down. That's also really good for defense and attacking. Having the tanks sit there, spread out.
Okay. So that's looking a little more robust as far as your production. So I guess is that the point that you want to be making your 3rd CC, or when do you want to be getting this 3rd base up?
Um, I'm gonna want my third CC up when I have when I'm or just nearly at the point where both of my bases are saturated with workers.
Right. So that comes pretty fast.
It does come very fast.
Like we're talking like 10 minutes about.
Mhm.
So we saw in uh Wings of Liberty a lot of Terrans doing two barracks up to reactor starport into a third. So that's kind of the idea that you have. You have three barracks, you can run up to the reactor starport.
Right.
But if you're wanting to get that third CC when you're on, I guess you'll have the four gases. So you're sitting more at like 48 or something
Right.
SCVs.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a little more time. So how about we say with your medevac production, as soon as you get up to that starport, we'll want to be thinking about taking a third.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna write that on. So starport medevac. So this is kind of the line of events, line of events, uh, chain of events.
Chain of events. Yeah, it works.
So you're gonna get three barracks, building Marines. You're gonna expand. Okay, once you got the expand, you're gonna get the gases so that you can tech up to starports, or tech up to medevacs. Sorry.
Yeah.
While you're getting your gases and you have this nice chunk of Marines, you're going to be active on the map, being aggressive if you can. If your opponent does something like a one gate expand, that's a great opportunity for you to be aggressive.
Right.
Or if he's doing something like two hatchery into a bunch of gas and getting his lair, that's another chance for you to be aggressive. So those are things you want to be thinking of. If the Zerg takes a third, maybe you want to be aggressive. So those are the things you want to be scouting for, and those are the things that this nice army can be used for. And then obviously can be used for defense against things like four gates or against a big Ling um, run by style.
Yeah.
So you take the map control and then you start teching to those starports. The nice thing is, as far as production buildings, you're just sitting on your three barracks, pumping out units. Maybe you want to throw a tech lab down to
Yeah.
obviously get
Tech lab or
stim and
yeah.
combat shield and sort of the basic upgrades.
Yeah.
And then you'll get your medevacs out, and then you'll drop that CC. So something that's really nice about this and what a lot of Terrans have done in the past is that the moment you get starports, you take map control back.
Mm-hmm.
So what you've done is you've taken map control before you take your first expansion, and then you're going to have this slight time where you're going to be more defensive until your medevacs come out. Then you're going to be aggressive again and take your third CC. So when we talked about you being aggressive expanding, we have done this just by looking at what production buildings you're building. So that's really good. And that's something you should think about. If I have medevacs, I have the possibility of drops. I can threaten it. I don't have to actually drop. I can push out with my units and maybe drop his third if he's taking it as a Zerg. Or maybe as a Protoss, you can threaten the drop, well, just taking your third, right? Because you're denying your opponent's third just by being aggressive and threatening the drop. So this is
Right.
going to this is really solid and can be used against all matchups. So that's really cool. So what's the next step once that third CC is finished and you've done some aggression?
Then I want to work on upgrades, throw down my
Big
engineering
time.
bays.
Big
Yeah,
time.
and then I
Big
can
time.
throw those turrets down at my bases. And want some more production buildings now. So on
Yeah.
3 base, I'm gonna want 9 production buildings total. So at this point, it comes down to more of what kind of composition I want.
Okay.
Which will sometimes will always depend on what my opponent is, and what they're doing, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, which in the case of some Zerg can change at any given moment. But
Yeah. Yeah.
like if they're going all lings, I'm gonna want some AOE stuff like Hellbats,
Yeah,
tanks.
definitely,
Um,
definitely.
if they're going all air, I'm gonna definitely not want Banshees,
Mm-hmm.
because those can't fight air.
Yeah.
um, but I mean, just the basic army that I've been going for, the Marine Marauder, Hellbat, Medvac. So I'm gonna want, I guess, another factory, another starport, couple more barracks, probably reactors
Okay.
on some of them to equal 9.
So you're taking your CC, your double engineering bay.
Yeah.
You're dropping turrets when those. You're not only dropping turrets, but you're upgrading your units.
Yeah.
So upgrades and turrets. And then we want to focus on production, is what you said. So, how many barracks do we need? Give me a specific number you want to hit on that 3 base. If you're thinking, because on 3 base you can support something like 12 production buildings,
12 production.
like optimally, right? If it's like 4 per base, which is kind of like all in, but when you're 3 base, you want to have that. So, how many barracks? Like you said, 2 starports, 2 factories. Should we just reactor both of them, or?
Yeah. So, or maybe I want to tech lab them so that I can get up some upgrades. Get the upgrade for the Hellbats, because the Blue Flame is for them too as well now. And then I can also have things like Banshees, do some cloaked Banshee harass possibly.
Okay, so I'm saying on your game plan.
I don't even know what the upgrades for Starport are, because I've never really made one.
Yeah. So I'm saying you hit max production buildings. So this is after your double engineering bay.
Yeah, so I guess what would that be? 2 more barracks in all. Well, one, so I have 5 total, 1 with a tech lab and 4 with reactors.
So that's only like 5 production buildings, right?
Yeah, that's 5, and then got the reactored factory, reactored starport, and then the tech lab starport and tech lab tech lab factory, tech lab starport. And then I guess you said 12, so I could have another barracks, and I guess I might as well have 2 of them with tech labs, so I can pump out more marauders.
So we're talking about 6 barracks?
Yeah, 6 barracks, 4 reactor, 2 tech lab.
Great, great. So that's the number you want to hit before you start making command centers, right? Because what I said is, when you have money, build command centers. But the most important thing is that you have the production buildings so you can spend your money. Because if you don't have production buildings and you just build command centers, then you have no way to remax, and then you get into those weird situations where you're like all in because you can't make an army.
Like one of the games I played versus Zerg this week, it was pitiful.
Yeah, yeah.
I had like eight CCs, and I couldn't. I had no. It was horrible.
Yeah, and so this is kind of the idea, and you can add some more barracks than that, but that's kind of the number. If you're sort of having trouble spending money and you're still making command centers, then add more. That's cool. That's great. But that's kind of the number you want to hit before you start adding more command centers, because your main will run out of minerals. You'll want to have a command center to take a fourth.
And I'm probably gonna, after I have all of those, that 12 production ability, at that point I guess my main almost running out of minerals at that point, or getting close, I guess, eh?
I'm sure it's getting close.
So I'm going to be wanting, as soon as I have those up, I'm going to want to be taking a 4th.
Okay, so we'll start. I'll just write CCs +++.
Yeah.
Because, as I said last week, just build CCs.
Build CCs.
Yeah.
The many.
Okay. So let's run through this game plan. Let's check your goals before we jump back into the game plan. So you wanted to find times to be aggressive. You wanted solid macro play for late game practice, and you wanted to talk about compositions a bit. So your game plan, get the 3 barracks, expand, get your gases, take map control with Marines. So this is the first step in the aggression wheel.
Yeah,
Is
take
you,
the Zelnagas and that kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Sit a guy at their expansion points. If he
yeah.
comes, I know, and he maybe runs away.
And just always be thinking against Terran and Protoss, if they're taking a faster expansion than me, I have an opportunity to be aggressive. And against Zerg, if they're taking something like a fast third, or if they're doing something like really fast tech, you have this opportunity to be aggressive.
Right.
In all those circumstances, you can take map control, but taking map control and then being aggressive is depending on what you're scouting with your Marines.
Yeah.
So then you're going to take the expansion, get the gases, then you're going to straight tech to starport. And it's at this point where you're going to be careful with spending mules and stuff like that because there is the
Right.
possibility of banshees. So either don't drop mules until you know what he's doing, or just be really careful, like being active on the map, having the map control. That'll give you a lot of awareness of what's happening.
Yeah.
So once those medevacs coming out, that's going to be another opportunity for you to be aggressive because you can do drops, you can threaten drops, and then you can just be really mobile around the map. So you're going to retake map control if you've lost it at all. So retake those watchtowers and like check for his third, check other things like that. And then if you have opportunity to be aggressive, take it. So your example you have here is against a Protoss who's going Colossus, you're going to have this nice mobile army that can exploit the fact that he has to group all of his units. So you can do things like drop the main, poke the front, and then he has to decide, okay, how do I deal with this? And then whatever side he chooses, you just run away that side and do a little damage with the side that he is not dealing with properly.
Right.
So it's just kind of like this nice little dance where you're like, I have a much more mobile army. It's not nearly as strong as you, but I'm gonna do a dance, and I like to dance. Terran vs Protoss. Terran vs Zerg. It's a lot about threatening aggression, and threatening drops, but it does become more about drops because you're if you're threatening your opponent, he's going to make a lot of units, and then he's going to be safe from any aggression. So then you have to be really careful with your units because his units are going to be more mobile than yours. So you're going to be in that awkward position where he can kill your army. So then it becomes more about the air mobility, where you have the drop ships. You can exploit the fact that even though he is mobile, you can be in very many different places at the same time, having multiple drops hitting at the same places. So that's another really thing. And during all of this, when you're moving out with your medevacs, what are you doing? Taking a third
Oh,
base.
taking a third. Yes.
Yes. Because as we said, aggression is so nicely handled with expansions. Or it's so nicely paired, sorry.
Paired, yes.
Paired. And then we're going to go ahead and madly panic upgrade our units because we did delay it quite a bit, but getting double engineering base is going to help us catch up. Well, maybe not necessarily catch up, but get to that 3-3 point with a maxed army, and it's not going to be too scary. You may have to do a bunch of dancing, but you're going to get good at dancing. And you're going to get good at dropping, because those are all these things that are really good aggression that is completely solid macro play, because you're never committing to anything. You're only going to do damage where you can do damage and save the units. So you're going to be dancing, and you're going to be dropping, killing drones, running away. Don't lose those medevacs. It's always more important to keep the units than it is to kill things.
Right. Yeah.
That is why MVP was/is the best Terran player ever, is because he emphasizes the value of just retaining your units. Units aren't useful when they're dead.
Yeah.
Very useful when they're alive, because Terran can repair, Terran can heal. We're golden, man. Back to 100 or whatever health we have. So always remember, any kind of aggression you're doing, any kind of dancing you're doing, it's all just smoke and mirrors. Any damage you can do, you will do. And if you see an opportunity to win the game, you will take such opportunity. But it's more about just dancing. It's about the dance. The Terran dance. So then, once you have this double engineering base, you're going to obviously upgrade. You're going to drop turrets because that's strong, solid play. Having a turret in each mineral line. And then you're going to hit max production buildings. So kind of our ballpark for that, with 6 barracks with a mixture of reactor tech labs, 2 factory with a mix, and 2 starport with a mix. Those are all things. That gives you a lot of flexibility, which is really good because you're going to be doing a very similar thing in all 3 matchups.
Yeah.
So it's really good that you sort of have this flexibility to do things like, I want to build tanks, I want to build Hellbats, I want to build Medivacs, I want to build Banshees, I want to, you have this really nice flexible production buildings. And then in the super late game, you already know what to do. Build
CCs.
Build CCs. Yes.
CCs.
Command centers. And obviously you want to make them into orbitals, but the command center is the first step to that puzzle. So we have a game plan for you to really flesh out this week and for you to really follow. So this will hopefully give you a really good direction on what production buildings get built when, and ultimately, see, the goal of me doing this whole thing was so that you spend your money. It's so that you're organized. It's so that you don't have to think about spending your money. You know how you're spending your money. You just keep following the list. And as long as you're building supply depots, making SCVs, and then building units / spending money, everything else will just fall into line, right? We simplify the game so that we can work on important things. So this is your nice, simple game plan. When we talk about simple, this is almost as simple as we can get. It's just about, maybe the most complicated thing is the dancing and the sort of aggression, but that's something you really want to work on this week. You really want to work on your aggression and your late game. So this is something we want to just work together. You're going to work with your aggression as you're getting to that late game. Just this nice little trade-off you're going to be working on. So next week, I want to see you active on the map, because we have all these nice pristine timings where you can just be active on the map. You're going to be very safe to be active. If you're active really early in the game, you have a lot of production buildings. You're safe with your Marines. If you're active on the map with starports, you can boost those starports and run away from any threat. So there's never a chance of you, oops, I lost my army. You just run away. It's wonderful. And then obviously once you hit the maxed army, you're going to have those double engineering bays. You're going to be taking your fourth. You're going to have tons of production buildings. Tons of production buildings. And you're going to be fine. So I'll make sure I send you this game plan. Is there any questions about your game plan before we end the show?
No.
Good.
Quite clear.
Hope, yes. Clarity, simplicity, all makes for a good dance. This is the Armory. I'm Archaic. Follow me at Twitter, Archaic Coaching. On YouTube, subscribe to me like all of my other awesome subscribers. What? Yes, I have subscribers, and you should be one. I want you to subscribe to my YouTube, because you'll watch Zaevul, you'll watch Glitch, you'll watch all the cool content that is coming up in the future. So excited to announce that. Zaevul, any last words?
Nope.
Have a good night, guys. This is the Armory.